Welcome to Kids Matter. I'm Dr. Elisa Minkin. As a pediatrician, mom, and grandma, I understand how challenging it can be to help our kids grow into their best selves. We are so much more powerful together. Here, I will be sharing the knowledge and wisdom of a wide range of people who understand and care deeply about children. I'm hoping for your input as well, because kids really do matter. They are our future. Welcome back to the Kids Matter podcast. I'm really honored and really excited to be here today with Dr. Phil Boucher. Dr. Boucher is a board-certified pediatrician, father of 6, and founder of Nebraska's first direct primary care pediatric clinic, Frontier Pediatrics. After earning his medical degree from the University of Nebraska College of Medicine and completing his residency at Children's Hospital Omaha, he spent a decade in the traditional system before breaking free to revolutionize patient care. Now, as a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics and trusted BabyCenter Medical Advisor, he also coaches other doctors to build thriving independent practices. I help parents feel more confident, connected, and supported as they raise healthy kids in a modern world filled with noise, stress, and too much advice. I love that tagline so much. That's awesome. We need more of you.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to get to chat.
Me too. So let's start with telling us more about your practice, because I've never interviewed someone who does DPC or direct primary care.
Yeah, so direct primary care is pretty cool. I first heard about direct primary care, maybe in 2020 or 2021. I had some friends that were doing it. It was pretty new then, especially in the pediatric realm. But I kind of got this itch that I couldn't stop scratching, that there must be a better way than, 30 plus patients per day and just running from room to room and saying, oh, yeah, I'd love to talk about your kid's asthma, but we're going to have to schedule a different visit, or we're going to have to add this onto your checkup, and we just got to run. And so I started my own direct primary care practice, and it's the first one in Nebraska. Instead of chasing insurance for every little thing, we just have a monthly membership fee, like a gym membership or like Netflix. And with that, patients get unlimited access to us, which sounds scary until you realize that patients just want some access to you, and
Right.
They don't need you to, race over to their house at 2 a.m. for a croupy cough. They just want to know that somebody will be there when they need them. And so they pay a monthly membership fee. We do a lot of our care over text message, which I actually love, because I can stand at my standing desk and walk on my treadmill, treadmill pad, while I'm delivering patient care. And so that's the practice. We do in-home newborn visits. We just do what people need. And it's so freeing to be able to say, yeah, like just today, a dad had texted in that he had to go pick his kid up from daycare because they have hand, foot, and mouth going around. And he was like, what do I do? And we just said, just send us some pictures. Like, we know hand, foot, and mouth is going around. We really don't need you to, drive 30 minutes to lay eyes on this kid that's otherwise happy and just got kicked out of daycare for spots. We can talk through this, and yep, hand, foot, and mouth is going around, and all those pictures that you sent look like hand, foot, and mouth. Here's what to do. Let us know if you need anything. And then we can just check in tomorrow, text him and say, how's it going? Any fevers? Those sorts of things, without all of the hassle that comes from traditional care.
Right. I don't know if you want to talk at all about the hassle, just so people can compare it. I'm thinking about trying to meet insurance metrics, for example. Right?
Totally. Right.
I mean, how much of what doctors and pediatricians specifically are doing nowadays is meeting metrics, right?
Exactly. Yep. And I think a lot of it, it's gotten harder too, because when I was I was a partner in a busy, private pediatric practice. And a lot of it was things that we had very little control over, that we were being measured against. And even more so now, when vaccine measurements come into play and you're doing everything you can, but the internet is working against you every step of the way to make it harder to meet those metrics, when your pay and your ability to keep the lights on and your staff employed really depends on things that are completely out of your control.
Really. And, I think especially after COVID, we really have to rebuild trust. I think that's a really big hill to climb. And I think it's amazing that you get to bypass the insurance and all the metrics and all the hoops you have to jump through to actually meet the patient where they're at, which, by the way, might be vaccinating on a different schedule, talk about
Sure.
vaccines. I'm not going to get into vaccines, but like it'd be amazing to not have to be doing all the documenting.
Oh, for sure. The documentation is huge. You know,
Right.
like when people talk about the old style documentation of like write AOM amoxicillin, that they would document in that way. I mean, it's a little bit more than that, but it's much closer to that than what it is on,
Right.
you know, Epic, where a sprained ankle generates 17 pages of PDFs to say like rest, ice, compression, elevation, let us know.
Right. All those hoops just for basic stuff that the parent might know already that you could tell them in a potential quick conversation or text message.
Yep.
So I think that's amazing. That is really amazing. I want to talk more about social media because you are a social media pediatrician. That's how I found you. That's why I follow you. You're awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So tell me what sorts of questions.
Okay. So the question is, I think that there is a very tough climate right now on social media. There's a lot of pressure to be the perfect parent, to always be emotionally regulating for your child and giving them all the stimulation. It can go on and on and on.
Right.
And you are that, let me quote you again, a modern world full of noise, stress, and too much advice. You're coming in there. And what are you doing differently?
Oh, I think it's telling parents that it's okay to struggle, because I think that you're right that they're fed through TikTok and Facebook and Instagram in particular this narrative that like you have to do all these specific things and you have to use very specific language, and if you say good job, you're setting your kid up for failure, for all the different reasons that are splashy on social media that raise people's anxiety. Like, I didn't even know that was a problem. Well, because it's not a real problem. It's just a manufactured problem that gets more clicks and likes and video views. And so my focus is really on how can you be just a teeny bit better in your parenting approaches and see how that manifests in the way that you show up for your child, their relationship, their confidence, their resilience, those sorts of things, rather than like getting these perfectly eloquent scripts that are really just you as a parent like masking and holding it all in to try and stand up to some sort of picture perfect parent narrative that Instagram puts in front of you day and night.
I love that. And I love how you use the hot word masking because that's really hot on social media, talking about kids masking their ADHD or masking their anxiety or so on and so forth. I keep saying this on my podcast that the best way to teach your kids is to show them how you deal with frustration and struggles.
Right. And so a lot of it is like, whether it's a matter of I'm really having a difficult moment, I'm feeling overwhelmed, it is really loud in here and it's hard for my brain to process. Like saying those things out loud and narrating your experience as a human helps the little humans that are near you to say, oh, my parent isn't perfect. They don't have it all together. And that's okay. And that's normal. Because I think what a lot of children grew up in is this home where the parent is always right, that obedience is expected first, that disrespect is completely unheard of. And what that results in is my parent is perfect. I'm the one that's broken. And when I grow up, if my kids aren't perfectly obedient, then I'm doing something wrong and I'm broken. So I need to be more harsh disciplinarian. And it's less like authoritarian cycle that they get into. Or kids just feel completely overwhelmed and I could never do as well as my parent who is absolutely perfect. So if instead we can narrate the experience of being a human, which comes with joy and sorrow and challenges and anxiety and frustration, then our children see that these are normal emotional expressions and we can live with those and we can learn to cope and to be more resilient, to get the help that we need and the support that we need, rather than, no, nothing's wrong here, nothing to see here, I'm all good. The house is on fire, but I'm sitting in the chair saying, it's fine, that sort of thing.
I love that. And you mentioned authoritarian parenting. And I think what we're seeing now is a backlash to authoritarian parenting.
Oh,
So I
for
think
sure.
a lot of the parents had that and they're desperate for something better. Like they grew up wanting to feel more nurtured. And then you have the gentle parenting trap. I call it the gentle parenting trap, right? Because they're too much in the other direction, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yep. They have definitely moved from the side of authoritarian, do what I say, I'm always right, you're always wrong, obedience is demanded, to it swung the pendulum the other way of, you're right, kid. And who am I to tell you that you should do that or not do that? And it's not that the relationship becomes the focus, which is great. Like the relationship
Mhm.
should be a big part of the focus of parenting, but it's more so avoiding discomfort, what gentle parenting often turns into. And if we look at the literature, gentle parenting is actually not a bad style of
Right.
parenting. It's a warm version of authoritative parenting,
Hmm.
and authoritative parenting is warm in and of itself. So I congratulate and commend parents that say they want to be gentle parents, but I also tell them that doesn't mean no boundaries. That doesn't mean no
Right.
expectations. And that doesn't mean that you just let your child rule the roost, because kids want and need boundaries and structure to feel safe and secure. And so we can focus on the relationship while holding on to those boundaries. And I think that my worry is that everybody said, I don't want to be authoritarian. I'm going to be gentle. And then, oh, this gentle thing isn't working out. My kid is entitled. They are causing a lot more trouble. I never feel like I'm in charge. I'm going to swing back towards authoritarian because maybe that's where I went wrong. And really, what we should be doing is trying to focus on the good parts of the authoritarian, which is the structure, and the good parts of the permissive, which is the warmth. And that is what authoritative parenting
Right.
is.
But you know what? I 100% agree. But I think that it's hard because, again, if it comes down to that, I have to be the perfect parent. I'm failing if I'm not that perfect, warm, authoritative parent. And I just want to
Right.
underscore again that it's okay to lose it. It's okay to make mistakes. It's the repair that happens after,
For sure.
right?
Yeah,
That
I
will
think
teach.
teaching the repair is huge. And
Yeah.
I actually do this authoritative parenting study group where I work with parents
Oh,
and
cool.
will have them walk through some of the things. And one of the days that we go through is on repair. And it's actually practicing what repair looks like by going and repairing with your child on something that might have seemed benign, might have seemed, in the more distant past, but practicing, hey, a couple weeks ago, when I got really mad because you wouldn't brush your teeth and I used my really big voice, you didn't deserve that and I'm sorry. And parents actually go and practice that even when the stakes are pretty low because the kid probably forgot about it. But we practice that so that we get more comfortable with the repair.
I love that. And I want to talk about anxiety. I don't want to blame gentle parenting on that. That's not a segue. It's a totally different topic because I do think, I do want to underscore that gentle parenting done right is great authoritative parenting.
Yeah, let's talk about anxiety. I think that is a huge issue that oftentimes, if we're doing permissive parenting, that can make anxiety worse.
It could, but so could authoritarian
Oh, for
parenting.
sure,
To
both
be
sides.
fair, we're not anti any specific methodology here. We're talking about providing the boundary structures and warmth, which we're going to call authoritative. But
Right. Well, without structure, kids don't know where they stand.
right.
And so there's a lot of anxiety of the unknown of like, what's it going to be like? What are the expectations of me? We have two dogs and we live out in the country, and they have these collars that buzz on their neck if they leave the perimeter that we've set up for them. Without that, they are prone to go out on the road and then they're at risk. And so within those boundaries, they have a lot of freedom. They can play, they can run, they can chase birds, they can do all the things. But we, as their caregivers and as their, dog parents, have put boundaries in place for their own safety. And so when children feel safe, they can live happily within those boundaries. But if they don't know where the boundaries are, and then we have a bad day and we move the boundaries on them, or they make a mistake that actually they thought was within the bounds, then it causes a lot more anxiety for them and they feel less secure in themselves. They feel less seen and less understood.
I love that, but I think that's not the only problem that parents are having. I think they're just having a lot of problems handling their child's discomfort
Oh, for sure. That's a huge part of it. I don't know how to handle my upset toddler.
or older child or adult
Yep.
child. I want to hear what your anxiety tune-up is. I saw that, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so we have a lot of patients in our practice, like a quarter of children or a quarter of teenagers and 1 in 12 children are diagnosed with anxiety. And we realize that there's a role for different things like therapy and a role for different things like medication for some of these kids. But there are a host of other things that often aren't addressed when we're talking about an anxious 7-year-old or 17-year-old or anywhere in between there. And so what we did is we created a specific visit that's designed to look at the other spheres that are involved with anxiety. So things like sleep, like doing a really deep dive on their sleep, not just like how many hours are you getting, but What does it look like in the evening when you're winding down? What does it look like in the middle of the night if you wake up and you're not sure what to do? What does it look like with your screens? What time are you waking up in the morning? Are you snoring? Is your sleep cycle all askew? So sleep, we look at nutrition, and are we getting adequate protein and fiber and the different things that our body needs to remain calm? Or is our blood sugar all over the place throughout the day because we're having cereal for breakfast and then waffles before school and then, the cheeseburger at lunch, but just eating the ketchup in the bun? Is that contributing to our anxiety? And then things like movement and parenting approaches, those things all play a role outside of medications and therapy. And they're things that we as parents can do every single day that help our anxious child.
I love this. And I see how you can do this in your special DPC practice. What do you say to people who don't have a DPC pediatrician?
I would say figure out from your pediatrician, what are some other things that we can do? We're doing the therapy. It's hard to get in. It takes a long time. And sometimes, honestly, it's expensive and we miss our sessions because we got soccer and piano and a sick kid at home and a bunch of other things. Are there other bigger picture pieces that we could put into place with our child that may help? If we look at the whole child, family, and the village surrounding them, what are the different things that we could do to help our anxious child? And you might have to lead them, and then they might say, I don't really know. And then you might have to turn to another resource or ask ChatGPT, like, hey, I'm looking for support for my anxious child. Can we talk about sleep? And honestly, ChatGPT can probably do a pretty good job of helping you figure out some sleep strategies.
Oh, and we got to talk later, not yet, but later about Human Up. Don't let me forget to talk about Human Up, because that's where that comes in really nicely. We could segue to that, but I'm not ready. So I just want to add two things. Number one, please ask for a separate appointment for this. I think a lot of times what happens is the parent comes in at the well visit and says, hand on the door, by the way. It really takes time. It's not a 5-minute thing. And I don't know if everybody's fully appreciative about how intertwined and complex these issues are.
For sure.
So ask for a separate appointment. And you can also ask, is there a pediatrician in the practice that is particularly good at mental, developmental, behavioral stuff? Because there often is, and ask for that person. Because we have different sub-skill sets, right?
Right, for sure. And interest in all sorts of things along those lines. So I think it's worth advocating for your child and seeing what's available, because sometimes I think pediatricians feel like, well, they just want a therapy referral and some medication. And okay, I see that. But if you as the parent are able to advocate and say, I definitely buy those science-based practices, and I'd also like to learn a little bit about other science-based practices that might help, that are things that we as parents can help with, because you're telling me my child needs medication, you're telling me my child needs therapy. I feel like there's not much for me to do, when there are actually a lot of things that we parents can do to help our child's anxiety.
So much. And also listen to my podcast, because I cover these topics. Today was a child psychiatrist talking about anxiety in children.
Awesome.
And I also did a separate one on SPACE, which is supportive parenting for anxious childhood emotions, a specialized approach. So different episode, giving myself advanced advertising for that one. I want to move on to ADHD just for a bit. I love your talk about the squirrely kids. I want to hear a little bit about what you mean by squirrely kids.
I mean, I think people mostly know what you're saying when you say a squirrely kid. They're the ones that are they're distracted by squirrels, and then they're acting like squirrels. They're all over the place.
I see, yeah.
And yes, exactly. And I think that is a very normal part of childhood, is to be easily distracted and interested in lots of different things. And so I try not to pathologize the normal attention span of a 5, 6, 7-year-old, and make sure that we're doing what we can to help these children outside of giving them labels and medications straight away. Some of them will definitely benefit from medications. A lot of them, especially if we're on the younger school age, the 5 and the 6 and the 7-year-olds, are developmentally on track and just need practice and skill building to move their bodies when it's appropriate, to focus when they're able to, and to have better expectations as a teacher, as a parent, as school systems around what a typical 6-year-old should be able to do and what they shouldn't be asked of.
Right. And speaking of a typical 6-year-old, I don't know if you're seeing more issues with kids who are young for their grade, particularly boys.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of good science and support for not necessarily redshirting, but holding them back and starting them later. And I actually encourage, if they're a birthday after Memorial Day, I definitely strongly encourage most of the parents of boys in particular to wait until they're 6. You know, if they're a June, July, August
Wow.
birthday and they're just turning 5 and you're putting them in kindergarten, the studies show that there is a much higher likelihood that they're going to pick up a label of ADHD just because of the month that they were born in, because their peers that are 5.5 or getting close to 6 are able to do things that they're not developmentally appropriate for. And so we're pathologizing the fact that they're just a little bit on the younger side for their class compared to their classmates.
That's absolutely right. And I have a pet peeve about pathologizing ADHD anyway. I like to think about it from the neurodiversity lens, which is it's just a
Hmm.
different kind of brain, but the brain is not functioning well in the school setting. And certainly if
Yeah,
you're younger, that's going to make it more of a poor fit, right? And I think it's also really important for parents to understand that they shouldn't be pressured into
mhm,
getting a diagnosis, getting medication. Not that medication isn't appropriate. Sometimes it's a
right,
lifesaver, it's
right,
often
totally,
needed. But I see, and I'm sure you see it all the time, where the school says, go to the doctor and get an ADHD evaluation. They've
yeah,
already decided that kid has ADHD, and they may not.
totally. And they've already kind of put them on a treatment path too. When they come in, the school has basically said like, hey, we need to get your kid under control. And so go to your pediatrician to get some pills. And I think that we push back about on that a lot in our practice. I've definitely had patients where we put a plan in place it's not medications, it's diet and nutrition and movement and good sleep and those sorts of things. And we'll check in with them and they'll be like, yeah, school's going great. We sent a letter that said, hey, here's the developmental appropriate expectations for this 5-year-old, for the 6-year-old. Here's some things that you can do. And then, all of a sudden they're empowered to put those practices into place because they got a letter that said like kids need movement and maybe give them breaks and let them move their body and have lower expectations. And that's all it took. And we saved them from getting started on medication too early or when it was unnecessary and
Mm,
inappropriate. And I definitely take the neurodiversity lens too. And there are certainly so many children out there that benefit from the label of ADHD, but I just worry that it gets over applied when it's not appropriate. And then it dilutes what it means for children that actually have ADHD when everybody that's a little bit squirrely as a 6-year-old is getting this label and medication put on them. And it's really hard to put the genie back into the box when you've gone down that path because stimulants to work
yeah.
great. And everybody can sit still. I mean, that's why they're abused in college because you can study and cram a lot of information in when you're on a stimulant. And so, of course, those kids all of a sudden are sitting still and getting better grades and all those sorts of things. Like, how do you put the genie back into the box of, I don't know, should we try them off the medication now? They're doing so well despite, the side effects and those sorts of things. They may have inadvertently been started on that when they really didn't need it because we were quick to say, you got to get this kid on a medication. I can't stand him in my class.
Right. And not just that, but one of my other pet peeves is kids with learning disabilities, particularly dyslexia, who get
Hmm.
labeled ADHD, put on medication. They do not necessarily do better because they were having trouble paying
Totally.
attention because they couldn't
Hmm.
understand, they couldn't read.
Hmm.
I find that to be one of the hardest things because I think the way we're teaching reading right now is not ideal in many places.
Yeah, we always, as part of our ADHD evaluation, talk about reading
Right.
because it's so entwined. And we're lucky to have a speech language pathologist in our office that
Wow.
focuses on the diagnosis and management of dyslexia too. So it's really easy for us to parse that out in our clinic because if they're having trouble with reading or it seems like they're doing really well in some subjects, but not really well in others that are more reading focused, before we just hop on, yes, let's just get them to focus more. Let's figure out what's going on with their eyes and their brain and those sorts of things so that we can make sure that everything is lined up and working in the right direction and we're not just spinning our wheels.
Yeah, your patients are so lucky.
No.
But for everybody else, ask for these things, keep
Right.
squeaking and don't give up because
Right.
it's more complicated. It really is than just kid moves a lot, give them an ADHD level, give them a stimulant.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I wanted to bring up is the increasing academic demands over time,
Hmm.
over emotional regulation,
For sure.
behavior. Yeah, I mean, we both agree about that. And I have some bits to say about that because we both agree. Do you specifically help your families teach those skills?
The emotional regulation skills?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, because I think that that's one of the biggest
Oh,
things that's missing too, is being able to figure out how to emotionally regulate. You're absolutely right. The
wow.
demands of academics have gotten so high and No Child Left Behind and all the different things that were intended to help catch kids up have often just resulted in teaching to the test And the test doesn't include any emotional regulation skills on it. It's how much math and reading comprehension and those sorts of things can you do. And so when we talk with families, we talk about, okay, how can we improve things at home? We can't maybe change things at school, but maybe we can focus on how can we help support emotional regulation. And a lot of it is just getting parents to regulate themselves and then to model that, like we talked about earlier, but also making sure that we're setting up the scenarios so that we can have a good start to the day. We can have a good return home at the end of the day while dinner is being made, and we can have a good bedtime experience. And then when we're able to do those things, it's much more easy to be emotionally regulated than if the kid is constantly running late and we're, trying to rush them out the door, and they're collapsing after school or around dinner time because they're starving and they've been working hard all day to hold it all together. And then bedtime, they're wired again. Like all those things make it hard to emotionally regulate.
And those are the kids without ADHD.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the kids that have all the faculties available.
Right. And those kids with ADHD need to learn them too, how much more so, right? Because part of it's not going to solve by a pill.
No,
right?
Right, for sure. And I think that's a big part of the missing picture when it comes to the diagnosis of ADHD too, is we focus a lot on the Vanderbilt or the Connors or those sorts of measures that really focus on how inattentive are they and how hyperactive are they. And when we look at ADHD, it is inattentiveness and hyperactivity are the external manifestations, but the internal ones of emotional regulation and executive functioning are the ones that we really need to help them to build skills around, because it's like if you have, I talk about this with kids that are really hypermobile, is you have to figure out how to support the muscles and strengthen the muscles around the hypermobile joints. And so to help with inattention, we build more emotional regulation, we build more executive functioning that help to scaffold and support around the loose joint of the inattentiveness or the hyperactivity. And so I think there's a lot to be said for working on those measures and really focusing in on those internal areas that often get neglected when it comes to the diagnosis of ADHD.
That's amazing. Again, your patients are so lucky. They didn't realize until I listened to you what you do. It's unbelievable. Parent training is an option, and it is supposed to be like first line with or without medication. I interviewed Mike McLeod. Have you heard of him? Of Grow Now ADHD. I know he knows you.
Yeah.
I think I've seen him post your stuff, unless it was you posting his. I don't remember. He's also, on Instagram, and he was on my podcast. He has the executive function playbook, and I've been recommending it to families in my practice.
Yeah, and those are things that are necessary, and those are things that we can do at home, because there's not a lot we can do, at 1 p.m. when they're at school. But here's things that we can do at home to practice and build those skills.
I love that. I want to talk about screens, at least for a few minutes.
Sure.
And it's a really hard thing, especially with the boys, especially with the neurodivergent boys. So you talked about something I loved. You called it the path of least resistance.
Yes, that was a long time ago. Gosh, I have to think back to what I even said.
Loved that. Oh my gosh, you got to remember.
Oh, the path of least resistance feels to me like what happens when we often as parents feel like we don't have a handle on things with our child, but they get really quote unquote regulated in front of screens, meaning they're not fighting, they're not being disrespectful, because they are totally locked in on what they're doing. And so it does become the path of least resistance. I could ask him to empty the dishwasher. He's probably not going to do it. He's going to put up a fight. And it's easier if I just have him over there playing Call of Duty or playing, NBA 2K instead, because it will be much easier on me as the parent. And then what happens is they get used to that, and they get used to that, and they get used to that. And that becomes in part the way that they are able to regulate themselves and cope with frustration is, I'll just play video games. I'll just escape. And that when it's so easy to get access to those video games and there aren't restrictions in place, it becomes something that just continues to loop itself more and more, because the parent is frustrated with them when they're not on their video games, but they're not frustrated when they're on their video games. And then for the child, it's like, this is a safe place for me, is to just be in this electronic world rather than facing the discomfort of peer relationships, of my parents, or those sorts of things.
That's a great explanation. And I just want to give empathy to parents out there. It's hard.
Oh, it's hard for sure.
So hard. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's like perfect can't be the enemy of the as good as you're going to get. And it's a process.
Totally.
It's not like, okay, my kid gets 1 hour of screen time on the weekdays and 2 hours on the weekends, like those perfect parenting kind of thing.
Right. But it takes work, and it does take intention, and
Yeah.
it just becomes too easy to let it keep slipping down the path of least resistance if you don't put those intentional limits in place so that you're able to have some structure and have some expectations around, yes, you can empty the dishwasher and you can do Minecraft, but it's not, you're going to do Minecraft, and then if I can negotiate or bribe or threaten you that you'll empty the dishwasher or do what you need to do to help around the house.
Right. And each kid's going to have a different solution with how much they actually need, when they can get off, how much notification they need to get off, what they need to be, motivated or whatever. It's very variable.
Totally.
But what really bothers me is the social media postings that say, oh, they're regulating, the screens are regulating. You should let them be on screens as much as they want because they're regulating. You used that word before in air quotes, and
I think that is the problem, is they seem regulated because they're not throwing a fit, because they are just completely in Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever it is. But when I look at regulation, I look at the other side of when you turned it off, how were they? And if you're telling me that they're a wreck before, and then you give them the iPad, and then you take away the iPad, and they're at peace, resilient, able to cope, then that might be how they regulate. But for the vast majority of kids, it's they're having a tantrum, they're upset, they're having a moment, and you say, do you want to watch a show? Here's the iPad, here's my phone, grab your phone, zone out for a little bit. And then when you go to take it back away, when you say time's up, it's right back to it. That's not regulation. That is just intermittent pacification.
Right. And it's taking away the child's ability to struggle to grow, right? We talked
Totally.
about that before. And I see this even with babies. I'm sure you've seen babies. They need to have a screen to have their diaper changed or to sit and
Oh my
with the
gosh.
parent, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Pediatrician pet peeves.
We need to learn how to live in our child's discomfort and be okay with their discomfort. And yes, they will be quiet when you're changing their diaper if you put on Cocomelon, but you shouldn't have to do that. And they can also, and you can also tolerate them fussing and squirming when you're changing their diaper.
Exactly. So I now want to talk about Human Up. Tell us what that is. Please tell us your role in it. I think it's an amazing resource. I've looked at it. I haven't looked at it much because it's not available yet for Android, only iPhone.
Oh, sure. So Human Up
iPhone.
is a really cool way for parents to get support from, I think of it like I hate to say cabinet these days because our cabinet is not in its best shape, but a council of different parenting experts on all the different spheres of parenting that you might be facing. Dr. Tina Payne Bryson is the one that got me interested in it because her and I have been good friends for a very long time.
Wow.
And it's a AI based chat, but it's powered by parenting experts. So things like ADHD, things like screens, things like sleep, there are experts on there that weigh in. So you're not just getting what the internet has to offer. You're not just getting the, large language models, best advice based on a lot of Reddit and Facebook and YouTube that you don't know really, like, is this the best advice that it's getting fed all the times through Reddit? Instead, it's based on the corpus of information, teaching, research, advice from vetted parenting experts.
Just to be clear, though, those vetted parent experts are not talking to you in the middle of the night.
Correct.
You're not getting them. But the idea of curating the experts so you don't get all the garbage that's out there, other people's opinions, that's what you're getting with a large language model.
Exactly. So it's a curated version of, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is that's based on the work of parent experts like Tina Payne Bryson, like Jess Leahy. There's a whole host of parenting gurus and those that have a lot of experience and a lot of research behind them that are supplying the knowledge that it's based on rather than just, the best the internet has to offer.
Do you ask the specific expert your question or does it automatically pick from them?
So you can do both. You can say, I want to have a conversation with Phil Boucher versus I want to talk with any of them about, child sleep or something along those lines.
Do they mix it up?
Do they mix it up?
Multidisciplinary? Yeah. I'm curious.
Yeah, I think they do. I haven't played as much with the ask the whole council sort of thing, But I know that at first it was you have to pick which expert you want, and now it will like let you ask a question and then give the advice of multiple. Like if you were taking something before, a council of, I think of the, in Lord of the Rings, the Council of Elrond, where they all meet, to decide what to do with the ring. So it's a little less intense than that, but it's that same concept of different opinions weighing in.
I do love that. So how would you say it could be used by parents and also by clinicians?
For parents, I think it provides an opportunity to get more specific advice than reading a whole book by Jeff Leahy or Tina Payne Bryson or something like that. Like when you're in the midst of it, is when you need somebody to give you some advice. My child is having a really tough time at bedtime. They won't sit at the table at dinner time. I'm really struggling with my teen and lying, whatever it might be. Like then reading a whole book is going to be pretty challenging for most parents. So this is an opportunity then to take, instead of reading The Gift of Failure by Jess Leahy, you're able to ask, what should I do in this specific situation where my teen keeps lying to me or they're sneaking or those sorts of things.
Right, but it can't give medical advice. And I don't think it can give behavioral advice either. I think it gives you information to empower you.
Yes, that's exactly how it works. Is it's not about like medical advice or things along those lines. It's a lot of here's what I'm thinking and here's how I typically tell people to approach it and things along those lines. You can't say like my kid has a fever of 102. What should I do? It's not going to say, give them some ibuprofen, they'll be fine sort of thing.
And it doesn't take away the role of the pediatrician or other healthcare professional.
For sure.
Provider. So I can't use the word provider. I can't do it.
Yes, it doesn't take the role of them, but I think it does help to complement what they offer because as we talked about at the top of the episode, their time is very short and parents have a lot of questions in between and a lot of really nuanced things. And so to have more voices that are helping them to be able to trust in the advice that they're getting is really powerful.
I do. And I see the parent reading it and then bringing in more carefully chosen questions, more informed questions to the clinician. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to kind of spark ideas back and forth.
Right. And what about from the clinician's end?
You mean from the clinician?
So I would promote this to a pediatrician if I understood, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to offer it to the parent? What is the parent supposed to do with it? Like, what should the pediatrician or other healthcare professionals say to do with Human Up?
I think that they might find that as a good resource. In the olden days, we would give out all sorts of pamphlets that mostly ended up in the trash,
right.
in the lobby. And this is a resource that they can turn to that is vetted by experts, that is specific to pediatric health, that's based on the best available evidence, and it can complement what the medical home offers as a trusted resource for in between visits and to sharpen questions and things along those lines.
Yeah, I really do love that. And speaking of time, I want to thank you so much. I also want to give hugs to pediatricians everywhere because not everybody gets to be a DPC pediatrician.
And it can be, but I understand.
Reach out to you, right? I know that you help people, but not everybody can be, right? I mean, there's so many factors and it's hard. We're all trying our best. We love kids. We all do, no matter how much time we have, no matter how many hoops we have to jump through and how much metrics we have to fill. So hugs to pediatricians and also to you. Thank you so, so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was great to chat.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Kids Matter. Raising healthy, happy children takes a village, and I'm grateful you're part of ours. If today's conversation resonated with you, please share this episode with another parent, grandparent, teacher, or anyone who cares about kids. Together, we can build a supportive community our children deserve. I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, or suggestions for future topics at kidsmatterpodcast@gmail.com. with no exclamation point. Your voice truly matters. Until next time, keep advocating for the children in your life because kids really do matter. They are our future. I'm Dr. Elisa Minkin, and this has been Kids Matter. Please note that while I am the pediatrician, I am not your child's pediatrician. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. For any medical concerns or decisions, please reach out to your child's healthcare professional.